In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this hat cake. Hat. Why did I say it like that? Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, then I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. So I need to apologize for the sound right now. My microphone stopped working. I filmed an entire video and there was no sound. And I am in the midst of getting a new microphone. I need to set that up. So I just wanted to get this video out for you guys. So I apologize in advance for the sound. But anyway, I want to show you how to make a carved hat cake. And usually I don't carve cakes, but when it's something like this, it's easy-ish. I don't mind doing it. And I'm starting with my cakes already baked. This is a chocolate cake with chocolate filling. And I have videos showing you how I make the chocolate cake, how I make the chocolate filling. I will link that in the description below. So let's get started. All right, I have my turntable with a piece of non-skid pad and a cardboard circle, and let's get a piece of duct tape and make a little donut and put a 5-inch circle down onto that board because I'm going to put a 5-inch cake on top. So I have 2 5-inch cakes and 1 4-inch. They are baked and wrapped in plastic. I froze them and then I thawed them. And now I'm unwrapping them. I have my little leveler and I'm going to put it on the correct notch and level the cakes. And let's save these pieces. My neighbors love me. Let's save the cake scraps. I like to take my scissors and just trim the excess. And now I have a little squirt bottle that has my simple syrup in it and spray both sides. I have videos going into further detail on how I fill cakes and I will link that below. Now I have some melted chocolate and I'm going to get a little bit of that on the little cake circle and I'm going to put it face up. So I'm putting the bottom down, wait for the chocolate to dry, and now I have some chocolate filling. I have a video showing you how I make this and I will link that below. So no need to be neat and perfect with it because I'm going to be carving this cake. So make sure that it goes over the sides and then place the second layer with the top facing up. Do you see how I'm doing the cut side facing down? And then I'm just smoothing or getting rid of that excess icing. And just trying to smooth it out as best as possible. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to carve this cake. Now I'm taking that plastic that I saved from earlier and I'm going to wrap up this cake and I want to let it settle. So let's set that aside. Now the top layer of this cake is 4 inches, so I want to make a 4-inch circle. I don't have 4-inch circles. I know you can buy them somewhere, but I just cut it to size. So let's unwrap this cake and get a little bit of chocolate on that 4-inch circle, turn it upside down. And I want to make sure the chocolate sets, so let that sit for maybe like 5 minutes. Now I have my knife. See, the point is at the very bottom and then the knife touches the top. So I have the knife on an angle. So what I want to first do is just try to remove this excess cake. What you don't see me doing is running that knife under hot water to get rid of all that icing and cake that's sticking to the knife in between. And I am just starting to carve this cake. Once I have it, basically that first section carved off, then I'm just going to refine it. So I'm holding the knife against that top cardboard and keeping the point of the knife down against the bottom of the cake so it stays on a slant. And I just want to clean off the board with a paper towel as well. And now I want to ice it. So this starts to lean to the side a little bit, so I just keep straightening it, and I'm just getting some icing starting at the very bottom. This is American Buttercream icing. I have videos showing you how I make that, and I will link it below. And I'm just doing a crumb coat, so this could get a little messy. This cake is pretty soft, so I'm holding the top part with my hand so it doesn't lean over. You see how it's leaning? So that's why I like to do a crumb coat first, because once I put it back in the fridge, it's not going to lean like this. So I'm getting the icing all the way over the top of the cardboard. And you see how it's leaning. I just keep pushing it back to where it's supposed to go. And then get a little bit more icing on here. So I don't want a super thin coat. And now I have this bench scraper, a very hot pot of water. And I'm going to dip the bench scraper in the water and wipe it on a paper towel. You won't see me do it every time, but that's what I'm doing. So I dipped it in there, wiped it off, and I'm holding that bench scraper on an angle because this is on an angle. You need to remember. And there wasn't enough icing at the top, so I just went back again and put some more on, and then dip it in the water, wipe it off, and wipe the icing off. Now this is just a crumb coat, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm taking the excess icing off of that cardboard circle, and let's set that aside. Fix that first. And let's set it in the refrigerator to solidify. Now my hands are clean. I just washed my hands and I'm going to handle this cake. I just took it out of the fridge. The icing is solid, and let's pop that off of that piece of tape. Nice. Flip it over, put it on a little cutting board, and I want to clean this board, so I'm going to remove all of that icing and put another piece of tape down like we did earlier. And now put that on top. It is so much easier to ice the cake upside down and then flip it over. That's what I found. So now I need to remove this circle because this is now the top of the hat. So I'm trying to get a knife underneath it. Remember, there is some chocolate holding it down, so I need to peel that away from the cake. And then I can set that aside, and now I want to fill this with some buttercream. So it's just so much easier to do it this way. Just trust me, to build it upside down, then flip it over. So I'm trying to get icing over the entire part of the exposed cake, over the edges a little bit. And then I will take my spatula and scrape off the excess. So remember, this icing is solid on the bottom part because I just took it out of the fridge, and then I'm pressing the excess icing back. I have videos showing you how I get straight edges and how I ice buttercream cakes, and I will link that below. But I'm just trying to make it as smooth as possible, filling in any extra spaces that are not perfect and refining the edges. And then I get a little bit of water on the top and just spread it around. It really helps smooth out that icing. And let's set that back in the fridge to solidify. Now I want to make the fondant. I have some leaf green, some golden yellow, and some electric green, and a little bit of Tylose powder. We need Tylose powder in all of my fondant. And I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on and knead that together. And add a little bit of electric green, a little bit of leaf green, a little bit of yellow, and knead it together and see what color I get. And it's still a little too light, so I'm going to add a little bit more coloring and knead that all together again. I got my cake out of the fridge. I have some piping gel and a brush, and I'm just brushing the piping gel all the way along the sides of the cake, and then dipping my brush into some water just to thin out that piping gel layer on the side of the cake, and wipe the board with a paper towel so that the fondant doesn't stick to it. And let's roll out this fondant. So I'm using cornstarch, not powdered sugar. Powdered sugar makes everything sticky. And then any air bubbles, I take a needle tool and pop from underneath. And lift it up and put it on top of the cake. Wow, why did it just get so bright? So I like to press the fondant around the top part, and then because it's tapered, it's going to wrinkle a little more. So you see how I'm pulling away the fondant and smoothing with my other hand. I have videos that go into complete detail showing you how I cover cakes in fondant, and I will link that in the description. Now, I'm taking a little piping tip and removing a piece of fondant in the middle because I keep getting air bubbles. I rushed this. I should have let this sit in the fridge a little longer before I covered it. Do you see that big air bubble that formed? So I'm just lifting that up and pushing the air towards the center. I'm going to work with it. The icing was a little too soft when I covered this, but whatever. I decided to show you guys because I'm sure it would happen to you as well. Take a fondant smoother, and I'm just smoothing the sides, and then I'm using my little pinch technique that I go over in my fondant video that will be linked in the description. And you see how it's like a little wrinkled at that top edge? That's super annoying. So I'm taking a piece of fondant and I'm rubbing it against the fondant to smooth it out. And I'm just going to have to smooth it a little more because I covered it when it was too soft. But oh well, such is life. Little air bubble there, so I'm popping it with a needle tool and rubbing it with a piece of fondant. I love smoothing fondant with fondant. I feel like it just smooths it so much better than a fondant smoother. And then taking my pizza cutter and removing the excess, and let's set that back in the fridge. Now I want to make the brim, so I'm using that same fondant and rolling it out. You will see how thin it is here. And this is going on a 6-inch cake, so I want it to be 3 inches larger than the cake it's sitting on. So I have a 9-inch cake pan and just make the little impression there and use my pizza cutter to cut out the circle. And then I'm going to smooth my cuts. And I have a little cutting board here and a cake box lid. I'm going to cut that in half and fold up the sides. And I'm going to set this little piece on top, and then the sides are going to dry with a curve. I'm going to set that aside to dry for about a day or two. Now, I took it off of the boxes and I felt like the lines were too harsh. So I took a paper towel and folded it and then stuck it underneath. I felt like the box was making like a weird impression in the brim. That was a little extra of me, but whatever. I got my cake out of the fridge and the icing is solid, and I'm just putting a little buttercream on top, and then I'm setting that brim on top. Again, this brim dried for about 2 days, so it could dry with that shape. Now I want to stack it, so I have my little sewing ruler, and I'm going to measure the straws and cut the straws and put all of the straws in that tier. I have a stacking tutorial that goes into complete detail on how I stack cakes, and I will link that in the description. So I want to get a little buttercream down and then remove that piece from the cardboard circle and stack that on top. And I want to dowel the cake. So that's that little piping tip that I used earlier. It fits the dowel. So again, I want to cut a little circle out and measure my dowel. And this is all covered in my stacking tutorial. I'm going to fill that void with some icing and then flatten a piece of that same green fondant. I'm going to stick that on top and then use my ball tool to smooth out the lines. And now I want to make the ribbon, so I have some pink fondant here. And I measured the circumference, so it's 16 inches. I need to make sure that it's long enough. So I sprinkled out some cornstarch and rolling it out really long. And I'm going to trim the top and the bottom edge, flip it over. And I just want to refine the edges, so I like to fold them in. I just feel like it looks a little neater. And then I get a little bit of water down and then fold that down. So it just looks nicer when it's not just a raw edge, and doing it on both sides. Flip it over again. Now I want to straighten it with my rulers. And now I'm using some skewers to get these little folds in here. I find when I have a long strip, it's easiest for me to use the skewer method, if you will. So I'm putting them evenly spaced out and pressing down to get the lines in the fondant. And then I lift it up and pull them down a little further and repeat the process all the way down the ribbon. And now I have those lines. So what I want to do is fold on the lines so I get it's just easier to do it this way. Just trust me. I mean, you could try to do it without the skewers, but at least those give you a guide to fold, to make the correct folds in the piece. I hope that makes sense. So now I have some Crisco, flip it over. Crisco is very forgiving, so I'm getting Crisco on the back of the entire ribbon. That way, once I put it on the cake, I can readjust it easily and it's not going to mess up that fondant. So I'm starting in the back, I wrap it around, and where it meets, I'm gonna take my scissors and just cut the excess off. And I'm using some piping gel on the one end because piping gel is going to really adhere it to the cake. Now I want to use piping gel so that end is not going to move. It was a little too long, so I trimmed it a little more. And now I'll get piping gel on that side as well, and then stick that together so you can't see the seam. Now I'm just lifting it into place, and because I use Crisco on the back of the rest, I can easily move it. Now I printed this out on my edible printer. I have videos showing you how I use an edible printer and edible images, and I will link that below. So I'm just cutting it out, flip it over, get a little piping gel on the back all the way to the edges, and then place it on a piece of fondant. And I'm using my pizza cutter just to trim the fondant away and smooth my cuts.
And that looks boring, so I want to edge it in gold. This is Rolcom Super Gold mixed with lemon extract. I will link it in the description. I'm just taking a big paintbrush and edging the little card here just to make it look a little more interesting. And then what I want to do is I'm trying to get a little bit of gold on the front part as well. So just using a steady hand for that. And now I'm going to flip that over and get some piping gel on the back and pull that away with my knife. You can't see it because my stupid hand's in the way, but that paintbrush, I'm pulling away the ribbon and sticking the corner in and pressing it down and just trying to readjust as needed. And now I have these flowers. I got them at Global Sugar Art on Amazon. I will find them and link them below. I like to stick it into a straw, stick the stem into a straw, put the straw into the cake, fill that with some icing, and then stick the stem down. And this will cover that little circle the hole that we had to cut out of the top. So I'm getting a little bit of icing on the back of that flower and removing the excess. And of course, I'm out of frame. I'm sorry. I'm having issues with my ring light. It was broken, so I'm trying to make do. But just getting a little bit of icing behind those flowers, and take a dry brush and remove the cornstarch. And I just want to add the little key that I made as well. And I just got a little piping gel behind that. And just refining that ribbon, putting some piping gel so it doesn't move. And there is the little hat cake.
So there you go. How adorable was this little hat cake, not a cat. So there you go. How adorable is this little cat? Why do I keep saying cat? Hat cake. And so you can make this on its own or as a topper. So when I'm putting this on top of another tier, I like to make the narrow part 2 inches smaller than the tier that it's going to be sitting on. So this was sitting on a 6-inch tier, and the bottom part of the hat is 4 inches. So the top 2 layers were 5, and then the bottom was 4. So if I was going to do it on a 7-inch cake, then I would do 2 6-inch layers and then a 5-inch layer, right? Because 5 is 2 less than 7. Does that make any sense? And then for the brim, I like to make that 3 inches wider. So this was going on a 6-inch cake. The brim, I used a 9-inch circle. If I was going to put it on a 7-inch cake, I would use a 10-inch circle. So I hope all of that makes sense. And here is the final product. I'll just put the entire cake over here. It is bottom tier is 8-inch, middle tier is 6, and then the top tier is the 2 layers of 5 on the 4. And I'm sorry, I just had a lot going on this week that I couldn't film doing the entire thing, but I have videos showing you how I make that gold name, and I will link that below. And what else did I do on here? I also have a video showing you how I do that big crooked bow, and I will link that below as well. So I think that's it. Did you learn any new techniques in this video? If you did, I would love to know what you learned. Put it in the comments below. And you can keep in touch on socials. Check out my website. Everything is listed in the description. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. Remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.